Welcome in to Rover Sports, and it's good to be back with you guys again here on this Tuesday afternoon. So, looking forward to doing a segment today, and this is a topic that I always enjoy talking about. It's probably my favorite position to study in sports. And it's probably my favorite topic just about in sports, and it's analyzing future quarterback stock. It's analyzing the next draft of quarterbacks. And today I'm going to spotlight really the top four quarterbacks. Now a lot of people are going to include Jordan Love out of Utah, who's a junior, who also has a big arm. I need to do more studying on Jordan Love. I've watched him in a couple of games. He seems to have good touch on his throws. He seems to have an arm that can translate to the next level. Matt Wells left that program, so predictably, he's been up and down with a new kind of coach that's leading that program. And also, the offensive coordinator at Utah State is a guy, very interesting guy, David Yost, and he also left that program. So anyway, I think it's appropriate now that we talk about the quarterbacks for this season that are entering the draft. And we can break quarterbacks down into pretty much four categories. And did I write down the categories? I kind of have the categories kind of in my head, the four categories. And the most intriguing prospect, let's break down the prospects one by one, and then we could talk about the prospects against each other. And we could compare the four categories and how they do. I'm going to start off with the guy that, I'm just going to start off by breaking down Tua Tagovailoa. Tagovailoa, dominant high school player in Hawaii. His idol was Marcus Mariota, who's a couple of years older than him. He had offers to USC. He had offers on the West Coast. He decided to go out to the middle of the country to Alabama. His family moved to Alabaster. He's a very nice kid. He has very strong family values. Coming from Hawaii, a Samoan background, and Tua Tagovailoa, very hard worker, very loyal, and a guy that if you know Tua Tagovailoa, he is just very respectful of authority, pretty much the easiest guy to coach that you're ever going to meet. Tagovailoa, to me, is probably the best prospect that I've ever seen coming out of college as a quarterback. You could argue Trevor Lawrence might have more physical talent, but the mental toughness and the physical and mental parts of the game, Tagovailoa, I don't think you can beat. So I guess I kind of spoiled, the rankings. But Tagovailoa, in that championship game against Georgia, he didn't play the entire season against Georgia. And he pretty much played in mop-up duty. Now, what's interesting is that even casual Alabama fans will tell you that Tua Tagovailoa that season was out-dueling Jalen Hertz in practice so badly to the point that the student managers on the sidelines were telling reporters, oh man, Alabama's got this game now. Alabama has a great chance to beat Georgia now. At halftime, Tua Tagovailoa was a household name, not only to people in the state of Alabama or Tide fans, but to everybody around the country. Because he won the Elite 11, and the buzz in practice every day was getting out that this guy is a phenom and a sensation. And Jalen Hertz just won Freshman of the Year in the SEC. Jalen Hertz was a quarterback at the time that had won 24 games and only lost 2 games. And Jalen Hertz is a guy right now that's up for a Heisman Trophy. And Jalen Hertz, if he would have been the quarterback 4 years at Alabama, that program would have been unbelievably successful as well. Okay? So Tua Tagovailoa was beating one of the best quarterbacks to come through Alabama. You could even argue that Jalen Hertz has more talent than McCarron. I think he has more talent than Greg McElroy, absolutely. I mean, McCarron was a really great college quarterback as well. But the point is that Tua Tagovailoa was so good at such a young age that as a freshman, he was beating out the sophomore in Jalen Hertz that was unbelievably successful at Alabama. That's how good Tua T was doing. And then Tua, he had the greatest game I would say a freshman quarterback has had ever. You could say that Trevor Lawrence had a better game, but first off, that Georgia defense had Roquan Smith on it. It had Lorenzo Carter. It did have DeAndre Baker. It had guys in the secondary that were outstanding, but, I mean, in the middle of that defense, I think you had Ledbetter, you had Atkins. That Georgia defense was completely and totally ridiculous. I'm failing to remember who else they had on defense that year. But Georgia, I also believe they had Sony Michel, Jake Fromm, and Nick Chubb also on that team. But that defense was impeccably, outstandingly good. And they were playing a game in Atlanta. The whole crowd, I would say 80% of people probably in that arena are Georgia fans. I think 70, because I know that there's a lot of Alabama people that could also go. But for him to come in cold to play the best defense in the country as an 18-year-old kid in the biggest stage possible and not flinch and not only lead the team down for touchdown drives, not only bring them back to come back, but then in overtime, take a huge sack, need a field goal, most pressure-packed situation, and the throw to Devontae Smith against quarters coverage that he threw in the back of the end zone is the most iconic play probably in the history of college football. It's probably a top 10 play in the history of college football. It's right up there with Vince Young running it in. It's right up there with the kick six. And this guy did it as a freshman at 18 years old. And then Tua Tagovailoa, all the expectation in the world. You think expectation is an easy thing to deal with? Just look at the dream team Philadelphia Eagles that flamed out. Look at Baker Mayfield. Expectation kills a lot of programs. It kills a lot of teams, and expectation is such a hard thing to live up to. And Tua, with Jalen Hertz, was starting over a guy in Jalen Hertz. He had all the expectation in the world when you have Jerry Jeudy and all those receivers. And all he did last year was post one of the highest quarterback ratings ever. And all he did last year was go to New York and almost win the Heisman from a guy in Kyler Murray that was playing with Lincoln Riley and that had a ridiculous season. So Tua Tagovailoa, again, led Alabama to an undefeated year. He was hurt a little bit in Georgia. Jalen Hertz came in, and Georgia also gave away that game with that fake punt and just that second half ineptitude. But Tua Tagovailoa, flawless product in terms of his mental capabilities, in terms of his leadership qualities, and then he's playing with expectation. I mean, he has the best receiving core. Everybody wants touches, whether it's Devontae Smith, whether it's Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle, or Ruggs. Ruggs, I believe, is also another player on that team. Henry Ruggs, Waddle, Smith, and then Jerry Jeudy out of Miami, who's is going to be a top 5 pick. So you have all those guys. You have to manage all those egos. It also is like, remember Zach Mettenberger had Odell and Jarvis Landry, and they weren't even that great, as good as Tua Tagovailoa. In terms of a physical performer, his release is the fastest that you're going to see. It's Drew Brees-like. I think that he plays like Drew Brees. In terms of the ball is out of his hands. He's not the tallest guy, 6'1", but he gets the ball out of his hands very quickly. Like Russell Wilson, very important too, especially with quarterbacks fumbling. He has big hands, size 10 hands. So you look at Jared Goff and Derek Carr, who have had shaky seasons, and even Drew Lock is not doing that well right now, and they all have below average hand sizes, like 8.5, 9. But Tua Tagovailoa, 6'1", can run around, and his release time is really quickest release, very accurate. The deep ball, he has very good touch on his deep ball. Now, his arm strength might not be Jacob Eason's. It might not be Josh Allen. Might not even be a Carson Wentz in terms of how far he can throw it. He could throw it about 55 yards. Absolutely is adequate enough. So Tua Tagovailoa, a dominant college football player. And people will say that Tua T, in terms of Alabama football players, might be the most decorated Alabama football player ever. And I don't know if he's going to win another national championship. I think McCarron might have had 2. I think that you could look at Julio Jones as being one of the most decorated, or Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, C.J. Mosley, even Reuben Foster was incredible, Jonathan Allen. You can go down the list of tremendous players at Alabama. And Tua Tagovailoa might just be one of the most decorated ever. And people will argue he's right up there with Namath in terms of his legendary status. He absolutely might be on the Mount Rushmore. I'd put him on the Mount Rushmore of Alabama football players. And that is such a special feat. So this guy has been a decorated college player since he was 18 years old. And all of that is important when you look at the context of these other guys that I'm also going to mention here in this video. So Tua Tagovailoa, I think, is great. Then you look at Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert, 4-star guy, but the thing I like about Herbert is that he wasn't necessarily the most coveted recruit. He went to Eugene High School. He went to Eugene, Oregon, and he wasn't even recruited that highly. He's 6'5", multi-sport athlete, not on social media at all. And a guy that was 6'5" and just had a lot of talent, but was raw. And again, he didn't transfer to a big-level Oregon football program. He stayed in Eugene, and he was overlooked, which is very positive. You look at players in the NFL that are overlooked, and it's a chip on the shoulder that you're going to carry with you. The thing I love about Herbert is he is smart enough to be a doctor. So he has like that Andrew Luck, just he's smart. And the thing I also love about Herbert is that he's not on social media at all. So he's the complete opposite personality of a Baker Mayfield, a Johnny Manziel, a wild card in the locker room. Okay, he is a quarterback that is traditional in the sense of he's going to prepare, he's going to focus on the game, and his teammates love him, and he's tough, and he, again, soft-spoken, just like Tua. They're both soft-spoken, and the teammates all love him, okay? Very important when you analyze the position, because you could have guys that have mixed reports at when you go through this process. Herbert, 6'5", has good arm strength. I think it's overrated by a lot. It's good. I wouldn't say that it's the elite. I wouldn't say it's a Jacob Eason type football, okay? But he could certainly throw it. He could throw it in the tight windows. He's 6'5". He does have an above-average arm for sure, and he's very, very fast. He's mobile, and he's a really, really good athlete, and he's durable. So I would say that he's like a Carson Wentz. I would say that he's like a Cam Newton, not to the degree of Cam trucking over people, but a Josh Allen in terms of being one of the more athletic quarterbacks that you're going to find, because he has the ability to sliver out of the pocket. He's tough, and at Oregon, he's elevated that program and left it much better than where he found it. I mean, he's led Cristobal to big wins. Now, if I had to nitpick, in big games, he hasn't had that killer instinct that Tua or Joe Burrow has had. So in big games, sometimes he can shrink, kind of play to the level of his competition a little bit. He's not putting up video game type numbers, but he's very, very solid. And he's been a solid player who's been under the microscope for a long time, and he's been playing at a consistent level, which is a really good college football level. He's been a very good college football player for about 3 years, and he could have came out last year. He could have came out last year and also been a high pick. I don't think that there's a whole lot wrong with this guy in Justin Herbert. You can point to maybe he doesn't win the biggest games. You could point to his deep ball accuracy being a problem. But this guy gets through his progressions. He's smart. He has above average height, a way above average athlete, tremendous athlete. And in the NFL, you need that kind of athlete. He's durable. Most durable out of all these guys, just right up there with Joe Burrow. And the arm strength is something I really like. And the guy is a hard worker, terrific leader. Intangibles are perfect. So Herbert is a flawless, really close to a flawless prospect, one of the best you're going to see. Let's look at Joe Burrow now. And let's compare him. Let's directly compare them to Tua. Yes, he beat Tua Tagovailoa in Tuscaloosa. Yes. Has he been playing unbelievable this year? For the last 3 months of the season, has Joe Burrow been the best player in college football? Absolutely, yes. You have to give that up to Joe Burrow. But we'd be remiss to not talk about Joe Burrow's past. And he doesn't have a bad past. I'm not talking about off the field. I'm talking about on the field. At Ohio State, he played behind J.T. Barrett. J.T. Barrett is the equivalent of Jalen Hertz, a really good college football quarterback. J.T. Barrett is a very underrated player just because he wasn't good at the NFL level. And just because Dwayne Haskins had a really good year after J.T. Barrett doesn't mean J.T. Barrett is not a legend in the eyes of Ohio State people. And if you watch Big Ten football, you know J.T. Barrett was a gamer, and J.T. Barrett was fantastic as a college player. Really good college player. So I just told you that Tua Tagovailoa was pushing a Jalen Hertz, and I would argue Jalen Hertz is just as good as J.T. Barrett. In fact, Jalen Hertz is going to be in New York at the Heisman ceremony this year. So Jalen Hertz is more talented than Barrett. He is better than J.T. Barrett. And Tua Tagovailoa was pushing in his freshman year Jalen Hertz every single game. Out of Ohio State, Joe Burrow couldn't even beat out Dwayne Haskins. Now you'll say Dwayne Haskins threw for 50 touchdowns and was a massive success. The point is that Joe Burrow had a year on Dwayne Haskins. Haskins was younger. So Joe Burrow was next in line. And then at Michigan, when J.T. Barrett couldn't play, Haskins was the number 2 quarterback. Do you think that Haskins, if he was in this draft this year, would be going ahead of Tua Tagovailoa and would be going ahead of Justin Herbert? No, because Haskins is a bigger guy who can't move that well. Haskins is a guy with a longer release than normal. And Haskins wasn't playing college football that long. So Haskins is a guy that, again, is not mobile. And you're seeing, and he makes bad decisions. And you're seeing that at the NFL level. So the Joe Burrow defenders are like, well, Dwayne Haskins was this unbelievable prospect. I mean, Dwayne Haskins, he got passed up to 17th in the draft. And then from a personality standpoint, Haskins was mocking teams that didn't draft him. The same thing that Josh Rosen was doing with the 9 mistakes. And you look at these two quarterbacks, Haskins and Rosen, and at least Haskins doesn't have the personality concerns, the teammate concerns of a Josh Rosen. But still, I mean, Haskins talking crap to the New York Giants about not drafting him. He goes to New York. He has an awful game. It's the Redskins, whatever. Now we're getting sidetracked. But Joe Burrow, he had one offer coming out of high school, kind of like Herbert, okay, to Ohio State. Joe Burrow was 6'4". If he was going into the draft last year, Joe Burrow would have been a 6th-round pick. He would have been in the Gardner Minshew territory. He would have been after Ryan Finley. He was an average SEC quarterback last year at LSU before Joe Brady got there. He lost to Florida. He lost to A&M. He lost to Alabama. Couldn't even put up a point. No one was talking about Joe Burrow being an NFL quarterback. Nobody was talking about him winning the Heisman. You could have got 200-1 odds on Joe Burrow winning the Heisman before this year. So it's been a meteoric rise for Joe Burrow. Meteoric. But if you're an evaluator, that's also a little bit scary. You know, you're banking on 1 year. Mitchell Trubisky, 1 great year. Not the biggest sample size of incredible success. Joe Burrow, average arm talent at best. Average. Okay? Joe Burrow hasn't played unbelievable defenses this year. So, Joe Burrow, not mobile either. Out of the four guys, Eason, Herbert, and Tua, by far the least mobility. So who are his pro comparisons? Maybe a Matt Ryan, right? Maybe a Matt Ryan. A lot of people just go to the top and say that he's Tom Brady because of the intangibles, because he's a pocket passer. But come on, look at the quarterbacks that are young that are succeeding, and look at the guys that are struggling a lot. You have Matt Ryan, who's struggling a lot, pocket passer. Phil Rivers struggling a lot, pure pocket passer, no athletic ability at all to really move. You got to be able to move. Look at Eli and Big Ben. They're getting worse because edge rushers are getting better. So the NFL is moving towards having a mobile quarterback, and Joe Burrow is not a mobile quarterback. He can make plays on the run occasionally, but his arm strength, his talent compared to Eason, Herbert, and Tua, I don't think they're close. Tua, accurate, throws a much faster football. Justin Herbert, more talented, bigger kid, better mobility. Burrow, to me, fringe second-round pick. The same as Hackenberg. I would take him at that spot in the second round. And in fairness to Joe Burrow, there have been quarterbacks that, with his same skill set, that have been taken in the latter half of the first round. You have Blaine Gabbert, who had the one great year under the guy from Utah State again, the crazy guy, offensive coordinator, with Gary Pinkel. Forget his name, but he's the OC at David Yost. Okay, so you had Gabbert. You also had Blake Bortles, who had one amazing game against Teddy Bridgewater at Louisville. You had Derek Carr at Fresno State that got drafted at the latter half of the first round. And then you had Teddy Bridgewater, who was a very solid quarterback at Louisville. So you had Gabbert, Blake Bortles. Jake Locker is another example of a guy going in the top 5 that Jake Locker was a guy that, again, had one really good year. And Jake Locker and Eason are ironically pretty similar guys, talking about the last guy. So Joe Burrow, the intangibles are off the charts. I couldn't like the kid anymore. I mean, this kid is a gamer. This kid in the interview process is ridiculous. His competitiveness, his maturity is even better than maybe any quarterback that you could scout. He's 6'4", which is adequate height for the position. He can make touch throws. He can operate an offense. But I don't know if he is a franchise quarterback. Where Herbert and Tua, I'm extremely confident they will be franchise guys. I don't know if Burrow will find success. I could see him fumbling a lot. I could see him in the pocket getting sacked. This is a guy that doesn't have great arm strength to throw to the corners of the field. This is a guy that I doubt will be an elite NFL quarterback at time. And again, if Joe Burrow is listening or if anybody sends this to him, which again I highly doubt, but this is just my opinion on the guy. I couldn't like Joe Burrow and the story of LSU anymore. That I have to make that clear. Joe Burrow, I am really hoping that he proves me wrong. I'm hoping that he goes on to not only win the Heisman, I kind of hope LSU wins the national championship if it's not for Minnesota. And I hope that Joe Burrow is absolutely sensational as a quarterback. I hope that he's just like Tom Brady. And he goes on and he makes this video look absolutely ridiculous. But too small of a sample size. I don't love his mobility or his athletic ability, and I don't think that he can hit big-time throws along the sideline in the NFL, in NFL really tight windows. He beat Alabama, but Alabama's defense is one of the worst in all of college football. He did tear up Florida, so I will give Joe Burrow credit in that regard. He tore up Florida. And Joe Burrow also had a great game at Texas. So in terms of a guy who's clutch, Joe Burrow absolutely is more clutch than Justin Herbert and then Jacob Eason. Because Justin Herbert, he doesn't have a killer instinct if I had to get on Herbert. That has been shown so far. I mean, Oregon chokes big games away. Oregon choked against Stanford last year, had that game in the bag. Oregon, I think hosting Washington might have lost. They're good for a couple chokes a year. but still 10-2 is 10-2. So it's still Herbert is doing a great job of still winning these games. But Joe Burrow, if you had to pick a guy to go down the field and lead you to a touchdown, Joe Burrow has that clutch gene. He had the clutch gene against Auburn, his confidence, his maturity, the intangibles. You can't get any better at intangibles. Now, he is 6'4", and he's very tough, so he'll shed tacklers. He's tough. He's everything a franchise quarterback should be in terms of the way that he leads his program. I'm just not comfortable putting him above Tua or Justin Herbert in my rankings at all. Now, Jacob Eason versus Burrow is very fascinating. If you were to combine the talents of Jacob Eason, if you were going to combine Jacob Eason, just if you watch Jacob Eason at his pro day, he might have the most ridiculous pro day since Josh Allen. Jacob Eason is even more accurate than Josh Allen. He might even be a better prospect. Now, what Jacob Eason needs to work on is a little bit of leadership, which we don't know a lot about Jacob Eason. And it sucks that Jacob Eason got hurt the year that Jake Fromm went to the national championship, because Jacob Eason is prone to making big mistakes. So Jake Fromm, more of a winner than Jacob Eason, and this year Jacob Eason makes boneheaded mistakes that cost his team games. So Jacob Eason reminds me a lot of Matthew Stafford, a quarterback that's going to go to an average market. He's going to be 8-8, 9-7. He's going to have some big games and big seasons occasionally. But he's not, I don't know if he can dominate, because he's not dominating college football. But who has a better chance of being a star, Jacob Eason or Joe Burrow? 1,000% it's Jacob Eason, because this guy throws the ball better than anybody in this draft class. This guy can move left, he can move right, he can hang in the pocket. This guy, Jacob Eason, is a freaking stud quarterback. Now, can Jacob Eason win games late? Can Jacob Eason avoid the big mistake? Because Jacob Eason, he doesn't see the field as well as Joe Burrow. He doesn't see the field like Tua or Justin Herbert. So his decision-making is poor. And we don't know about his leadership qualities. But Jacob Eason, if you're the Tennessee Titans or you're the Tampa Bay Bucks, if he's sitting there at 17 or 18, absolutely you should snag this guy. Because I don't think he's going to suck at all at the NFL level. I think he'll be really good. I think he'll be good. I like all three of these kids in terms of being very good. I think Tua will be elite. Like, Tua will be Hall of Fame good, if I had to project, as long as, knock on wood, he doesn't get hurt. Tua Tagovailoa, to me, Hall of Fame good. Herbert is like Phillip Rivers, going to be Pro Bowl good, going to be very solid, going to totally uplift your franchise good. Jacob Eason, to me, Matthew Stafford. Big arm, going to play in this league as a starting quarterback for about 10 to 15 years. He is franchise quarterback material, 1,000%. Franchise quarterback. Then Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow could very well be a Ryan Finley. He could be unfortunately, he could be an Alex Smith in San Francisco or a Mitchell Trubisky. He could be, when you compare Joe Burrow to his physical talents in the NFL, you're looking at a guy, Matt Ryan is even putting it best, but I mean, Joe Burrow is a lot closer to Ryan Finley than he is to a great quarterback. I mean, does Joe Burrow have a quick release? Maybe. So I see Joe Burrow as a quarterback, honestly, that is not a franchise quarterback. He will be a guy that will play for about 4 years, and I really hope I'm wrong, because the kid couldn't be a better kid, as I described. His intangibles are off the charts. That's why he gets compared to Brady. But Burrow by far is my fourth-rated quarterback. He might even, I think he would probably go after Love on my list, because I'm taking emotion out of it. Because Joe Burrow, I want to interview Joe Burrow in Mobile. And Joe Burrow has thick skin. So he appreciates people that will criticize him. He appreciates people that will give their opinion. And it's nothing personal against Joe Burrow. If I was a friend of Joe Burrow, I would also tell him this, or I wouldn't tell him this, right? If I was a friend, I would obviously support him and make him feel absolutely confident. But this is me coming to the show and being honest with the audience here. And I think it's a controversial take because I think that a lot of people are getting sucked up in this overnight sensation that is Joe Burrow, that is Joe Brady. And Joe Burrow, very good at reading defenses. So maybe he's Alex Smith. Maybe he's a better Andy Dalton for the Cincinnati Bengals. But I think it's a big mistake if they don't go Herbert and Tua. There is a world where Jacob Eason throws a lot of interceptions and where he kind of flames out not that good, but I don't see it. I see him playing as a franchise quarterback like Stafford. Joe Burrow, I just think that Joe Burrow is going to start for like 5 years. He'll be average in the NFL at best. I think he'll get sacked. I don't think he's that good. He's a great college player, but it's overnight. It's too soon. And I've watched Burrow long enough to know kind of what he is, and he's done an unbelievable job of improving, and his confidence level and the hate. You could describe this, I guess, just because I'm criticizing someone, I guess it automatically makes me a hater, that I hate everything about Joe Burrow, when again, I'm making it crystal clear that's not the point. I love Joe Burrow, and I want Joe Burrow to prove me wrong in this video. But I'm critiquing Burrow compared to these other guys. This is an NFL conversation. In terms of a college quarterback, he's right up there behind Tua. And this year, he's the best college quarterback. He's the best college one. He's a Heisman Trophy. He is a legend forever in the state of Louisiana. He can run for senator and become a senator. He brought Louisiana State football back. He brought LSU football to the forefront. He was the guy, the founding fathers of LSU passing game football. What he's done for the Baton Rouge community, what he's done being a guy that was overlooked completely in this process. The fact that he didn't turn into another Austin Kendall. The fact that he transferred and didn't just turn into another run-of-the-mill Ben Hicks type quarterback. Because he could have been Ben Hicks out of Ohio State. He was a third stringer. What he's done is nothing short of spectacular. And he deserves to be celebrated. Absolutely. I appreciate Joe Burrow for his college football greatness. I do. We're comparing him now to a completely different game in the NFL, how he translates to the next level. That was the point of this video. But again, I recapped Alabama LSU. I talked about how good Joe Burrow was, and I'm absolutely appreciating greatness at this level for this year for Joe Burrow. So those are my thoughts on the 4 quarterbacks, guys. I hope that you guys appreciated this video. Thank you guys for watching the channel and the video.